Okay, so this is AQA English Language, Paper 1, Question 2, and these are just some very, very quick tips. Bear in mind, I assume you've done loads of practice, your subject terminology is all in place. These are just things that spring to mind whenever I think about Paper 1, Question 2. Alright, so typically how does it look? Not only on your exam paper will it give you the question, it'll also cut out the little section you have to look at, so you really can't get this wrong. Alright, and this is the focus of language. This is what you've been doing in English literature. It's almost a pared down version of everything that you've done. You still need to explore connotations, you still need to talk about how it makes you feel, about what you link it to, what it reminds you of. But really this is a 10-minute question, 8 marks, so we can kind of get on with it. And what are we looking at? We're looking at words and phrases, so obviously specific adjectives, verbs. We're looking at language features and techniques. So you could be looking at, I don't know, anything from juxtaposition to similes and metaphors. The last one is sentence forms. I was once at a meeting and even one of the chief examiners said, ooh, it's not a nice one. Personally, if you're going to talk about sentence forms, try and save it for question 4. I wouldn't like to do it and I'm an English teacher. Okay, so what do we need to do in the exam? In this section, we need to explore quotations. Let's just very briefly talk about what that means. It means that when you've selected your quotation to talk about, when you're answering the question about how the writer uses language to blah, 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 you're going to say what technique is it. So that's subject terminology. Without that, you're not going to get very high marks. You must use that specific language of the subject. The first thing I would do with the quotation as well is say what does it actually mean? You know, if I said that, I don't know, she was a diamond, what does that mean? What's being implied? What does that connote? Where does it belong? For example, if you notice something at the beginning of the extract, it might change towards the end. Who says it and where? That's usually kind of mainly for an English literature type question, but if you can work out the kind of, if you associate with a character or something you learn very quickly, that could go in handy. Can you link it to another quotation? There's nothing wrong with finding patterns or making links, they're lovely. A lexical set is one of the very easy ways to be very sophisticated in this answer. And also a range of alternative meanings. You're not going to go crazy, but 1, 2, 3 different meanings for each language feature could be beautiful. Now for this one, I recommend you use squee paragraphs. A lot of people call it P, a lot of people call it, I don't know, petal or Peter, whatever. I personally like this because I think it's a much quicker way to analyse. It's not as in-depth as something like a Peter or a petal paragraph, but it doesn't take as long. Remember, you have 10 minutes roughly to say 3 different things. That's not going to be 3 pages worth. So what does it mean then? Make a statement, be clear. A concept-led one. For example, the writer uses language to create a frightening atmosphere. Rather than saying the writer uses metaphors, full stop, because it actually doesn't make any sense. Next one, quotations, direct and indirect. Indirect, where you kind of put it in your own words. You might just highlight, zoom in on one keyword, for example, plus using subject terminology, the words of English, similes, metaphors, adjectives. Next one is inference. So what's being suggested or implied by this? If I said, I don't know, the woman was a pig, then what does that mean? Does that say greedy, unattractive, lazy? You've got to have different kind of things that are being implied. And what does it make you think of? What are the associations? I often like just this reminds me of. That's a nice clear way to say what you're on about. And these extra 2. Now, maybe not for each one of the 3 paragraphs, but intent. What's the author up to? Is it misleading? Does he have an agenda or she have an agenda? Are they trying to kind of imply something? And the impact, now this is all about effect. Everything you say has to be about the effect on the reader. Whether you're saying the word reader or not, this creates a tense atmosphere. That is effect. But I like to throw the word in reader at least once or twice for this question. Okay, right then. Question 2, top tips. Explore the quotations, use 3 or 4 squee paragraphs, but don't overcomplicate it. It's English language, not literature. You are looking at that section. You can refer to something else in the text, but you're not going to get any marks for it. It might help you with your understanding, but focus on that area. Again, 8 marks, 10 minutes. Personally, for 3 different features, I like to talk about a word type first. Now, that could be patterns, I don't know, aggressive verbs. So you could list 3. But you're still just talking about one type of word. And then 2 more paragraphs about actual language techniques. Similes or anything that's figurative that creates imagery is way more meaty. You can say way more things. Also, use the whole extract, the allocated lines you're told, lines, I don't know, lines 9 to 21. Use the whole thing, not just the first couple of sentences. I often think students look a bit lazy and a bit desperate if they just talk about the first couple of sentences. Even if it's in there, even if there's something good, try and talk about the whole thing. And my final thing, it's the dream, isn't it? Be perceptive. You know, can you link some of the images, for example, to how the character's feeling? Is there any way you can say something more in depth? Bring your own knowledge, bring your own kind of understanding, bring something from literature. You know, if there's locks and key images, for example, you might think, right, well, it's suggesting someone's chained away, someone feels bound, someone feels that they can't escape, and there's frustration from that. Think carefully, use your literature training for that one. Okay, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but if you look kind of to the last paragraph here, this is a little bit perceptive. Although the grounds seem abandoned and full of decay, the house is personified when the writer notes how it had lived before. Now, instead of being silent, the house comes alive in a form of magical resurrection from the dead or awoken from a long sleep. The house therefore becomes almost an old friend, softly welcoming the narrator to look through the windows at a peaceful life she has possibly left behind. It is clearly a place that stirs her memory and her heart. This is talking about, you know, kind of filling in some gaps. Why is the character feeling this way? Obviously, it takes a lot of time. Look back over your English literature revision. This should help you. Okay, and that's about it. I know that was very quick, but this is a lovely question. You've had lots of training. You'll be really good at this one. Good luck.